You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to Horror Ramblings, your podcast for all things horror. I am your favorite host, Steven. Hi, how you doing? And with me is co-host, Lester Blosser.
Hello. Oh.
I just thought that would be fun. Gonna throw everybody off with a little, his name is slipping my mind. Come on.
It's not Igor, is it?
Well, yeah, the Igor, but the actor, the guy who played. I was trying to pull it as I was sitting here thinking of the guy, and I was just like, "Hey, come on now, you know his name." Yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up now.
I mean, you were acting that out quite well. The listeners don't get to see what I see, but that was noteworthy right there.
Well, thank you. I mean, I try.
Well, you know.
Okay, well, maybe his name was not. Well, he was, but he was. God, things they make stuff complicated, because I know Bela Lugosi was technically Igor initially, and then there was kind of Dwight Fry doing his, and that's not the one I'm thinking of. Who am I thinking of? He's got the weird eyes, and God, this is driving me nuts.
Was it from Young Frankenstein?
Well, no, he's doing a take on that.
Let me see here. Let me see what I can find.
God. And maybe it's not even Igor that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of... Jesus Christ. Why can I not think of this actor's name? I see him clear as day, and I cannot for the life of me remember his name. I'm going to have to pull up... I'm sorry, Ramblers. My brain...
Steven will not rest until he gets this.
No, I gotta have this name. And I know it's Peter Lorre. Jesus Christ! I knew Peter.
I just found it when you said it.
God, thank you. Yes, Peter Lorre. He used to talk like this in all these movies. Whether it be in the Maltese Falcon. It is you with your stupid incompetent... Okay, sorry.
Speaking of funny voices and unique voices, I just have to bring up the one guy from The Simpsons who always goes, "Yes."
Oh, yes.
They did an episode where Homer looked at him. He's like, "Is something wrong with you?" He's like, "I had a stroke." Fucking Simpsons, man.
Love The Simpsons.
If you don't love The Simpsons, at least, I mean, figure it out, people. That's all I can say.
You know what? I'll say this, because I was usually one of the people that would say probably season 11, season 12 is where it kind of, stopped being good, because that's what a lot of people say. The first seasons are the best, and then the later seasons are the worst. I actually went through, I made it a mission. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start watching all the episodes that I don't remember, and I'm going to see if it's as bad as people like to make it sound. It's not. There might not be as many iconic moments or jokes, but I actually appreciated some of the stuff that they did in later seasons, where they actually had some character growth. Yeah. You saw certain characters' lives change. Like, I didn't realize that Ned Flanders got remarried.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. To Edna Krabappel, of all people. And then she died.
Poor Ned.
And it was like, oh my God.
Poor Ned.
Yeah, it's that kind of... It was something I was not expecting, and I appreciated from the show that at least you're trying to mix it up a little bit, And I know this is not a horror theme. We could talk about the Treehouse of Horror sometime.
I think we should do a whole episode on that, because right before... So we took the kids to Universal, and we went to Simpsons Land. But before we went, I was like, I need to make my son familiar with The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what to put on for him? And I said, I got it. We're going to watch the Halloween episodes. And boy, did we watch some Halloween episodes.
They're so much fun.
The Simpsons rule at doing Halloween. I don't care what anybody says. And
they're doing 2 this year, I heard.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what the themes were, but they were focused. I think one, they said they were doing like an entire Stranger Things episode or something like that. I think I heard that correctly.
I know they were talking about wanting to do a whole episode based off of
maybe
Pennywise
it was
and all that.
Maybe
it could be either one. I've heard a bunch of rumors. You know, 1 year they did, as weird as it sounds, they did a Treehouse of Horror episode 1 year, and that same year they did just a Halloween episode where it just actually showed the Simpsons kids trick-or-treating and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that like threw me for a loop, but I really liked the episode. So,
yeah, you were right. It was it. So I don't know where I got this Stranger Things.
They're going to have a Stranger Things segment, I think.
Gotcha.
In the Treehouse of Horror episode. And, I'm just going to say this. A lot of people might not know this, but if you ever watch the intro for the Treehouse of Horror, if you're sitting there and you're like, man, this intro is really long, just know that the reason they did that was because they didn't have a whole lot of ideas for the episode. I found that out the other day. I was like, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
But even that can be fun at times, too.
But, the show's been on for over 20 years. Obviously, they're not always going to have winners.
30.
God, it's been 30 already? 30. Jesus criminy.
Yeah.
Holy.
We're in season 33 now, this year.
God. Yeah. Where did the time go?
It makes you feel old, because I remember when that show premiered, and I was like, oh, man, that's cool.
It's crazy because the guy, like, I was just looking these people up the other day. The guy that does Mr. Burns' voice is getting close to the age that Mr. Burns probably is.
Yeah, they're all getting up there.
Like, it's crazy. And fun fact, I know this is a horror podcast, but I just have to say this, and this show has Halloween episodes too. The show Hey Arnold, just gonna put this out there, and I think I've said this before, but the guy that created Hey Arnold, Matt Groening, is his brother-in-law.
Oh, really? That's
yeah,
cool.
I had seen that. I had seen that somewhere, and I kind of looked into it, and I guess Matt Groening has actually helped a little bit on some of the writing for Hey Arnold.
That's cool.
And I'm pretty sure the guy that does Homer Simpson's voice did Grandpa's voice on Hey Arnold.
I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Would you want to talk about a show that, like, took it a step far? Like, there's a here I go talking about stuff that's not horror related, but I don't care. I got to bring this up. This was a kid's show. Hey Arnold was a kid's show. They have an episode where in the boarding house where, all these people live, there's a Christmas episode where their Vietnamese neighbor, all he wants is to see his daughter, who he gave up as a baby, put her on a helicopter so she could escape from their war-torn country. That's a kid's show, man. That's heavy.
Yeah.
But, Arnold found his daughter, so that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
God, best... That's one of those kids shows, like, even as an adult, you can go back and you can watch it and you can appreciate it.
Yeah, which I like that some shows aren't diminished. Like, it kind of makes you feel like you were justified in watching it in some way. When you kind of look back on it, it's like, this is actually pretty good. Regardless of being a kid show, it's really deeper than I remembered. So you feel like you were kind of locked into something you didn't realize at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, it just, I don't know, I think that people are a lot, as weird as it sounds, I think that people are a lot more compassionate, and a lot of that can be accredited to the shows you watched as a kid and everything, and I don't know, I think it's just one of those things,
Yeah.
But speaking of all of this, we're getting a little too, mushy goo here about stuff. This is a horror podcast. We're supposed to be scary.
Scary.
But I guess this kind of goes in line sort of with what we were going to talk about today. We're talking about the best of the best. It's sort of where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. And we briefly discussed this today. We had a bit of a late start, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We were discussing the Mount Rushmore of horror, the best of the best. And I have a feeling this is going to be really difficult to a degree.
I'm already going to say that I'm struggling to place one or two more based on the criteria that I personally created for myself. I would love to know what you're looking at in terms of trying to pinpoint who would kind of fit the bill here.
Well, there's two different things that I kind of thought about. I thought about the most memorable horror villains, the ones that the audience cherishes the most as a means to do it. And then I thought, what about the most powerful villains in horror films? And that leaves a lot of room for speculation. I mean, if you want to break your Mount Rushmores down to inhuman monsters, slashers. There's all kinds of things that you could break it down into, but if we're just going off body count, well, that's going to eliminate some of the people that I would probably want to put on my list. It's personal preference a lot of the time, but
sure.
What would your criteria be? Mine's really simplified, so
I think I've been trying to narrow it down to characters that I would consider iconic for some particular reason within the genre. What is it that they brought to the table? And that can really eliminate a lot, but it could also bring a lot of others up for debate, because then you're starting to ask very important questions. Well, why is this particular one more important than that one? Or what is it about this one that makes that character more important overall? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like I've got like I said, I'm missing a puzzle piece, and I'm still trying to sort it out, but I've almost got it.
Okay.
So I'm hoping I can clinch it.
I think part of it too would be, how do I put it? I'm really struggling here if you can't tell. There are different characters that are iconic because of what they do, the brutality of what they do. Different characters have different types of victims, things like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that could be part of it. Just to name one, I'm not going to say at this moment, I'm not going to say whether or not this one would be on my list, but Stalker of a Lifetime reward goes to Michael Myers, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's been stalking Laurie for 40 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, aside from that, I mean, let's see, how many people would we have on our Mount Rushmore?
I feel like I'm sticking with the rule of 4, because there's 4 on Mount Rushmore, and I feel like that. And that might not be ideal, but seems ideal for if we're saying the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I will agree. To make it a little easier, I've got an idea. We could do a Mount Rushmore and the Mount Rushmore runner-up.
Okay.
We can the ultimate 4, and then 4 that we would maybe consider for that list, because there's many different ways that you could go.
Mm-hmm.
But let's have this conversation, because I feel like this is going to be a difficult conversation a little bit.
Sure.
Now, if you had to pick, we'll get one of your first picks, and
okay.
we'll kind of debate it for a minute, see where we're at.
All right. If you want one of my first choices, and I debated on this for a lot of reasons, but I think this is the proper call. First face on my Mount Rushmore would be Frankenstein's monster, the original from the Universal days. The monster is so iconic. The monster comes from this long line of classic Universal monster films. Now, some could argue that Dracula should be number 1 because it kicked things off. And that's in all fairness, sure. But Frankenstein, that film, and what that monster represented, I felt like did a lot more than Dracula did, because it not only has a superb sequel follow-up, Bride of Frankenstein, but it's probably one of the longer running franchise characters throughout, because that particular character shows up in so many other movies, not just, like Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, but all these other little side things. I mean, he's there. Yeah. He almost becomes like this prop per se through all these films where, we're trying to learn something, so we've got to get the monster and we've got to understand it, and then that'll give us the key to this and the key to that, and then he's used as a weapon, like in, obviously here's a horror comedy, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't Abbott and Costello meet Dracula or the Wolfman. It was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So that character, even the design itself, it's iconic. People do not call it Frankenstein's monster. They call it Frankenstein, knowing better than they should. But that's how iconic the concept of this character has become.
Yeah.
That when you think Frankenstein, you think of the bulge, you think of the green, the flat head. The monsters, they ripped that off. Yeah. Obviously they did the whole Universal ripoff regardless, but that is the look. That is the idea. That is the concept. Dracula, even to this day, kind of has variations. We don't see a concept just like that Dracula.
Yeah.
You know, Bela Lugosi's, we see variations now. We see like Bram Stoker's with Gary Oldman. We see the sexy Dracula where he's doesn't look like anything at all. He's just a guy who happens to be Dracula.
Yeah.
But Frankenstein has a very specific look. He has a very specific purpose. He is iconic, and he is one of the originals of the big screen, of the silver screen as they call it. So I've got to give him props for being one of the original monsters that kicked off horror in cinema, and one of the most long-lasting, memorable characters.
And honestly, Frankenstein was one of the ones that I was kind of debating on, for the simple fact, to simplify a lot of what you just said. Whenever I ask somebody, name a classic movie monster, Frankenstein's normally the first choice.
Sure.
So I could see him up on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
So there's one guy up there. There's one. Now, I feel like sort of have to move through a generational type deal for these monsters and for this Mount Rushmore of horror. And I feel like there should be some sort of killer doll up there.
See, yeah, I was kind of thinking that too.
I kind of feel like there should be some representation. And I might get a little flack for this. My first instinct would tell me, let's put Chucky up on there. Chucky is iconic.
I mean, 2 decades.
Yeah.
3, matter of fact, now.
The scary thing, though, is that there is a newer doll that has become really iconic. But I still think I would give it to Chucky, and I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about. Annabelle. So it becomes a question of which one would more people be okay with? And I'm torn because Chucky's been around for so long, and he really is so freaking iconic. But Annabelle's just kind of like taken over these last few years, and it's kind of scary.
I think I would have to kind of give it to Chucky because of his long-lasting ability. The fact that he is still the same Chucky, hasn't been rebooted despite a remake movie. I'm talking about that franchise as a whole. You take a look at Freddy, you take a look at Jason, you take a look at Michael. They've either stopped, been rebooted, tweaked, whatever, but their franchises have pretty much hit the brakes.
Yeah.
Chucky is still going. Chucky is the original doll. Might not have been the first killer doll movie, but he's certainly the one with the most legs.
Yeah.
Who's lasted. So yeah, I mean, and you know, over time, Annabelle may take that over.
Yeah.
But currently, right now, she has 3 movies under her belt, plus 1 appearance, 2 appearances in The Conjuring.
Yeah, and you know, just about every DC movie now, she makes some kind of appearance.
Yeah. So
even in Aquaman.
Yeah, weirdly, but well, if you know why.
Well, yeah.
But no, you got to give. I think Chucky's the right call here because of his longevity and everything he brought to the genre.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you there. Just Annabelle's coming for him.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
You got to give her some more time, see where she winds up.
Yeah. Now, so we've got Frankenstein.
Okay.
We've got Chucky.
Yeah.
Here's where I am really torn. So I have a cutting board upstairs in my office. I know this is weird, but it's to make a point here. And it was a wedding gift, and it has some horror movie villains on it. It has 5 villains on it. It has Freddy, Michael Myers, Pennywise. It has Jason and Leatherface on it. These are 80s slashers. And 80s slashers are so iconic that it is unreal.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm struggling a little bit because I feel like one of them does deserve a place on the wall. Could they all have their own wall? If you were doing just a slasher wall, yes, they could all have their own wall.
Certainly.
They're all iconic. If we went and we did it just based off of who did it first, we'd have to give it to Leatherface.
That's actually the argument that I made because he is the godfather of slashers.
Yes.
Close second would be Michael Myers because he was right there on the cusp and probably defined it more, but you don't have... And I know this is circumstantial because we'd have to time travel to even find this out. But in all technicality, you don't have Michael Myers without Leatherface. The idea of what this type of killer is was just refined by John Carpenter.
Yeah.
And then everybody emulated his version until someone else comes around like Wes Craven and tries to reinvent that, because we're not even going to mince words. Mrs. Voorhees and Jason, I mean, that was Sean Cunningham is admitted as such. Rip it off.
Yeah.
Just do whatever but rip it off. And other filmmakers of the time were doing the same thing. What's making money? Slashers. What do we do? Just rip it off.
Yep.
And that's how we have so many horror or holiday-themed horror films, as it were. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that in itself is a play on a real-life event, but with a slasher undertone. Now, if we're even going that far, we could probably rewind it and say Norman Bates needs to be there, because he would technically be Ed Gein in its more, finer form. But I still feel like Leatherface creates more of a character of the mask slasher that we've all come to become accustomed to.
Yeah.
Not to dismiss Psycho and Norman Bates by any means, but if we're kind of creating the slasher idea, I feel like Leatherface kind of leans into it a little bit more.
And see that's where I'm really torn, because they reinvented the slasher with Freddy. They did. But the most noticed slasher, I think the one that everybody kind of gravitates toward, I would have to give that to Jason. Jason is probably the most recognized slasher.
Sure.
I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I love Leatherface. But when it comes to just raw power, I feel like if you put Jason, Michael Myers, and Leatherface in a room, Jason's the one that's walking out.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And he's the most, to me, he's the most recognizable. Like, people recognize Leatherface. They do. But
seems like a deeper cut
yeah,
for some people.
Jason has just cemented himself above and beyond. So that's where I'm kind of torn. You know I'm a Nightmare on Elm Street fan, so I can't believe I'm even saying this.
But, I mean, you're right. I mean, you take a look at any costume shop, you go to any store come Halloween, what do they have? Some cheap ass hockey mask that's just trying to rip it off. It's not like you walk in there and you see Freddy gloves lying around. You don't. But you damn if you don't see tons of little hockey masks run, on the store shelves during Halloween every fucking year. So yeah, I would almost kind of argue, Jason does have that iconic status, like I was arguing with Frankenstein's monster. So to hell with the Godfather status, who was first. Like I said, with Dracula, Jason would kind of have that advantage for breaking the barriers and being the one. Hell, you even think about the characters. When someone's talking about the movie, they might be talking about Halloween, but who do they always say? Oh, Jason's coming to get him on Halloween now.
Yep.
It's like, no, not. But they'll always go Jason.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are so many Friday the 13th films. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of films. I mean, Halloween had so many films, but Jason
and timelines.
Yeah, Jason has just had so many films, and they've always just stayed true. He's this big, hulking, killing machine. And I don't know. I feel like Jason would be the way to go. If we were, if we do just 80s slashers. Now, if we were doing slashers in general, this might be one that you might be like, what? But I would even go as far as to possibly throw Ghostface into the equation, just because of how recognizable the character is.
Yeah, true.
Do I think he's cooler than Jason in them? No. But that mask and that voice and everything, you recognize it.
Sure.
But I still think I would give it to Jason.
No, yeah, I'd have to give it to Jason, because again, without Jason, you don't have that character. So at least I can argue against my choice because of something I'd made known previously. So here, I'm definitely going to stick with Jason, agreeing with that, because yeah, the iconic nature of the character going well beyond just being a horror character. Everybody knows Jason.
Yeah.
So he's become like Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Honestly. And on a side note, real quick, just real quick, because I'm gonna feel dirty since I didn't fight for Freddy more. But facts are facts, guys. If I was doing my own Mount Rushmore, it would be Freddy Krueger from Part 1 and Part 2, Freddy from Part 3. So the first 3 movies, those Freddy's faces would be up on the wall, and the 4th one would be New Nightmare. Just gonna put that out there. On a side note.
Just saying.
But Jason, just something about because Freddy's face is recognizable, but when I first think Freddy, I think of the brown hat. I think of the fedora and the glove. That's what I think of instantly.
He definitely has an iconic status that you can't deny, but he's not showing up on the store shelves the same way. And there could be good reason for that.
Yeah.
But still, you can see the machetes, you see the cheap hockey masks. I guess maybe because it's an easier sell that you can kind of forge.
And honestly, the Freddy Krueger thing, Freddy Krueger became so engraved in pop culture that I could see putting him on something like that for that reason. But just for the sheer sake of the movies, just speaking on the movies, I have to just give it. I have to give it to Jason. I have to. So let's see. We've got Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster. If anybody out there's like, wait a minute. We've got Chucky. We've got Jason. So the question is now, we've gone through some different generations of characters. Question is, what other iconic monster or slasher would we be able to use?
I've got a thought, because I was trying to think again, what would fit this list? What are we trying to focus on? Now, you did Killer Doll, which could almost fall under slashers, but at the same time, it does have its own genre. It's not like he's the only killer doll who just happens to be a slasher. There are tons of killer doll movies. So I was trying to think, what's another subgenre that's important to horror that we need to focus on? And creature features would be where my mind was at, but does that fall in line with killer dolls? See what I mean?
A little bit, yeah.
So I was a little like, I don't know, but if I did, I went ahead and wrote it down so we can debate this one, and maybe we can find our way to number 4. Because this is obviously an odd, might seem like an odd choice, but I'm going to try to argue in favor of its iconic status for numerous reasons, and I know we've talked about this film before. But if we were focused on creature features, what would be a creature that would be iconic? What would be your first thought? Now, I think someone might think Creature from the Black Lagoon because it is an iconic design. But I think I'd have to give it to our old buddy Bruce.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought you were going to say.
Because this film not only did so much for so many people, first blockbuster, launched Steven Spielberg's career, so on and so forth, but this launched the shark genre of films. You do not have Deep Blue Sea, Sharknado, that Ouija shark, house sharks, avalanche sharks, all these stupid fucking shark movies do not exist without Jaws.
Yeah.
Period. Nothing was like it before, and nothing has been like it since. Everything wants to be this, and they have never, ever amounted to anything close. So I feel like this is absolutely the creature feature king is a shark. The shark.
Yeah.
The shark that launched 1 million ships, if you ask me. So that's where I stand on that. I mean, there are a lot of other creatures that really kind of came to mind that I feel like are iconic. I remember them.
Yeah.
And I feel like are more, I don't want to say better known. They're more interesting than a shark.
Yeah.
But it's what he stands for, what it embodies. It kicked off an entire subgenre of horror.
Yeah.
Underwater fear, terror. You don't know what's under, you never get into the water, whatever. Jaws was responsible for that.
As soon as you said creature feature, I don't know if maybe there was just like a gleam in your eye or something that I saw for a moment there, but I instantly thought that you were going to say Jaws. And for the life of me, like part of me wants to be like, yes, it's a creature feature, but it's also, like a regular animal, just super big. But I can't think of any kind of argument for it right at the moment. Like I can't. Like Jaws is iconic in that respect. Bruce is he's just as iconic as any slasher that you're gonna think of or anything like that. If if we had to move anything around, I'd probably keep him on there.
Yeah.
It kind of boils down to the argument too of, like you said, there are a lot of good creature features, but Jaws is a creature. He was in the feature. He's that memorable. You can't really even argue, because I know some people might argue, well, what about, the alien or the predator? Well, those are aliens. They're not necessarily creatures.
Right.
I think that they would have to be on their own kind of list. But this is why this show works. You make good points and you make it hard to argue good points. But no, I think I would have to side with you on the Jaws thing. I really do think that I would have to side with you there, because I cannot think of anything. I'm still a little salty about Jason, but that's okay. That's okay.
It's okay.
So let's review here just real quick, because I just thought of something while we were doing this.
Okay.
I know we said we were going to do like a runner-up list, but I have another idea.
Okay.
So we've got Frankenstein's monster, the classic monster that I'm sure most people think of. We've got the killer doll that has creeped people out for 20 years? Chucky. 30, sorry. God, I'm obsessed with 20 today for some reason.
Yeah.
Then we've got my main man, Mr. Jason Voorhees. And the almighty Bruce. You're going to need a bigger boat. Now, I think that's a solid Mount Rushmore. And I know that people listening are like, I don't know about all that. Might be a few. Might be some people that agree.
This is why we need arguments. I want to hear people's arguments against.
I would love it. Just tell us what you think, guys. We really want to know. I mean, it's all a matter of perception. My personal Mount Rushmore would probably be a lot different, I think.
Sure.
I think I would have some different things on mine. Not too different. I know Freddy would be on mine, but that's just for the simple fact that I'm a big Freddy fan. You would probably have Leatherface on yours somewhere because you're a huge fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, before I get into the other idea that I had real quick, I just looked up on IGN the scariest horror movies of all time, and I scrolled down. They've got like 25 on this list, but I scrolled down to the first few that are on here. I'm gonna say them, and we can decide what aspect of that movie we would put on a Mount Rushmore. I thought that would be kind of fun. And then I have another idea. This one's gonna get a little crazy, I think, but the first one is The Shining. I could see Jack Nicholson face through the door on the Mount Rushmore.
Certainly, yeah.
Don't know. Sound like something that would be cool to see?
Oh yeah.
This was one we did not think of. And the face is iconic when she smiles and turns her head completely around.
Regan.
The Exorcist. That's their number 2.
Okay.
Number 3 is Psycho.
See, and I don't know. I felt like the argument against that has to be what the outfits, the look, the idea of a slasher. And I know he dresses up his mother, but it's usually in the shadows. We never really see it, and it could be misconstrued. It's not an iconic.
It's not as foreboding.
It's not iconic. Yeah, it's not a character like those characters. It's a persona of his mother.
And number
you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. No, it's just they had to change the look. They had to make it more sinister.
Mother Bates is not The Shape.
Yes. And speaking of The Shape, their fourth one that they have on their list is Halloween.
Okay.
So I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see Michael standing his own pretty well. And then we have, I'm just going to do the top 10, just real quick. We've got The Bride of Frankenstein, and then Alien.
Okay.
Jaws is number 7 on this list of theirs. Silence of the Lambs. Evil Dead 2 is number 9 on the list.
Okay.
And Night of the Living Dead. Yeah,
see, that was one I was thinking of too, because I could also argue it kicked off a genre as well, kind of what I was doing with Bruce, but I don't know. I mean, that could also be under, I guess, do zombies, are they considered creature features?
That's a good point.
Because I feel like they have their own, it's zombie movies, and creature features are something else.
Maybe at one point, like we've talked about previously, maybe at one point they were all together.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth be told, you could create multiple Mount Rushmores given the different genres and everything.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is number 12 on this list, just so you know. Poltergeist is on here. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to see where these other movies fall. Nightmare on Elm Street is 15. Dawn of the Dead 2004 is 16.
Wait, whoa.
I'm listening.
Whoa.
I'm listening.
Why is that on there and not the original?
I have no idea. I haven't checked yet. It might be on here, but it might be further down, which would not make very much sense.
I have a love-hate relationship with that film.
Yeah.
Because I love the man who wrote it, and I hate the man who directed it.
Oh, yeah, Zack Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
Who
James Gunn wrote it. So, and that's why it's so good.
Yeah. And
bad at the same time.
Just so you know, I loved your imitation of him the other day.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's just how I feel about him.
Here's a movie that I love that I feel should be a little higher up on the list. An American Werewolf in London. It's 19.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's underrated, I think, sometimes. People don't think about it as much.
And The Fly is number 20, the 1986 version. What the hell?
No.
This list is not making me happy right now.
No.
Man. But I know we're doing our Mount Rushmore, but now this list is just throwing me off. Scream is number 25 on the list, so I mean, it's the last one on the list.
Okay. I'd have to see it in comparison to everything else, but no, Fly needs to come up. Come on, man.
Right.
It's always a solid watch. I can't, I want to watch it more. I'd probably watch it a lot obsessively, but sometimes I have this weird thing where I don't want to watch movies all the time. If I watched it recently, I want there to be time away from it so I can come back and appreciate it again just as much.
Yeah.
My wife, she's not like that. She'll want to watch something like you watched it 2 months ago and she'll want to watch it again. I'm like, honey, did you not remember we watched this recently? And she's like, no, we didn't. I'm like, yeah, we did. I'm pretty sure we did.
I'm like that with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
I give myself a little time out from it every so often. I love it, and I could watch it back to back, but I like to take a little break because I feel like when you take a little break and you watch it again, sometimes you pick up on things a little differently. That's just me. But so, speaking of Mount Rushmores, I thought of something. Let's do a Mount Rushmore of horror writers and directors.
Ooh, damn. Now I'm gonna have to think.
I thought this one would be kind of fun.
Okay. Let's see.
I'm gonna start heavy real quick.
Okay.
I think Wes Craven should be on there.
Yeah.
He not only gave us Freddy, he gave us Serpent in the Rainbow, People Under the Stairs. He made Scream as amazing as it was. He reinvented the genre multiple times, and in a sort of love-hate thing, he tried to get away from the genre, but when he realized that he was going to be as good as he was in it, he said, if I'm going to be a caged bird, I'm going to sing the most beautiful song I can sing. We got The Hills Have Eyes because of him, The Last House on the Left, and the man just kept working. I haven't seen even his weakest entries. Like he did a movie called, I think it was Shocker.
Yeah.
Even his weakest entries, because he considers that one of his weaker films, are still solid films. He's iconic because he's iconic, and I mean the guy even looks iconic. And when they finally finished everything with Freddy Krueger, or they thought they did, after they did Freddy's Dead, Wes Craven was like, "You need Freddy to be scary again? You need it to be reinvented? Here, hold my beer." And we got New Nightmare, which is the most meta film you will ever watch.
But so damn good.
It's just, he thought of something that nobody had thought to do. And it's just pure genius. I mean, and I have nothing but respect for him. It's a shame that he's gone.
Yeah. Because
it would be amazing to see what he would create. His last few films got a little bit of hate from people. He directed Scream 4. And Scream 4 is one of those movies that I know we've talked about that on another show as well. It's not a bad movie. I think it's a little underrated. Do I think they could have done a few things differently? Yes. But from a directing standpoint, seeing how things were carried out, he did amazing like he always does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would want to put him on that list, most definitely. So.
All right. Well, hearing you say that gave me time to scour and make sure that I had names. And I think I've got some good ones.
All right.
I think I've got some great ones to add to your list because, Craven would be fantastic on that list. I could definitely agree with that. We saw that he was capable of doing, even though it didn't work out the way he wanted it to, he was capable of doing other things other than horror. But horror is his bread and butter, and that's where he will always remain beloved. And happy to see anything that he was trying to do. And it wasn't just like he was doing just Freddy, you know what I mean? Because I know that could be a deterrent. People are like, well, what did they do different? What did they do that would make them stand apart? Well, he did tons of horror, different kinds of horror.
He also did Red Eye, which is actually a really good movie.
I remember that one.
He did Cursed, which I thought was a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's one, My Soul to Take. That movie did not get a lot of respect when it came out. I think it's a fantastic film. It had a very unique idea. I kind of felt like it was taking some notes from Nightmare on Elm Street, in all honesty, but in the best of ways.
Yeah.
So, yes, Wes Craven. That's all I can say.
My addition to this list would be Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
We talked about Psycho. We're talking about one film, The Birds, Rear Window. That could be taken as something maybe not horror, but it's a horror of a different type. But I'll even argue, going back to Psycho, we're talking, if there was kind of a modern take on horror, it was that.
Yeah.
He went kind of against the grain, against the studio. They didn't want to do it, but he did. And it's one of those films that really plays as a murder mystery, but it is kind of a slasher at its core, kind of setting the blueprints of what a slasher needs to be. Mm-hmm. And then, other people, I guess, I don't want to say more talented than more people, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for here? Someone who wants to really try something completely new by paying homage, but really taking it a step farther. Because they did. He worked within the confines of what he was doing, but there were other horror directors that came about and said, no, let's take it a step farther.
People who wanted to push the envelope.
Exactly. But, take a look at stuff like The Birds. We're talking about a movie about killer birds, which is just insane. But then you take a look at some of the choices he made in that film to help kind of increase the tension. No music. That was one of the first things that blew my mind. The music is essentially the bird calls. Yeah. So there is not a score at all throughout that entire film. You just hear squawk, quack, quack, and that just becomes the background noise.
Yeah.
So that's kind of terrifying in a way.
Oh.
And I find that a lot of his choices in horror, because obviously some people might not see his movies as horror, but he set the groundwork for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And Psycho's definitely one of those that is iconic for a reason. And without that film, I don't want to say that Anthony Perkins wouldn't have had a career, but over time he definitely made a career out of Norman Bates.
Yeah.
Hell, he even, if you take a look at that, we were talking about how Psycho really didn't have a slasher quality to it. Psycho 3, that was the one he directed. And by God, he did absolutely turn it into a slasher film.
Yeah.
Like, of that era.
Yep.
So.
And Hitchcock was, a lot of the things that he did in his films for the time were extremely controversial. And I respect him. Yeah. I respect him for that. I kind of have, like, I hate to talk negatively of the dead, but I love him as a director and as a creative person. There were some things that happened personally in his life that kind of make me look at him like, you shouldn't have handled that the way you handled it.
Yeah.
I know there was a lot of issue with the movie The Birds.
Mm-hmm.
I know he was, I don't want to say obsessed or anything like that, but he really wanted to win over one of the leading ladies, and when she turned him down, he was kind of a jerk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It did lead to a really good scene in the film. She didn't know there were going to be live birds in one of the scenes, so her panic is real.
Yeah.
But I would side with you on that. For all the work that Hitchcock did, he definitely has earned credit as definitely a horror master, I would say.
Sure. You got anybody else?
How do I put this one? He's been in the news lately because they're doing the finger quotes here final film of the movie he created, the character he created.
Sure.
Mr. John Carpenter.
Yeah.
John Carpenter has given us some. He's given us some amazing work.
Yes.
Most people will know him from Halloween. I believe he did The Fog.
He did, yeah.
Which is a fantastic film. Watch the original Fog, though. The remake is okay, but I like the original one very much. And a movie of his that does not get the credit it deserves, The Thing.
The Thing, yeah. I feel like that's a cult classic of the highest degree.
Yes. It doesn't sound like he's done a ton of work, but if you look through the things that John Carpenter has done, I feel like they've all been gems.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would put him on that list. The Thing alone is enough to make me respect him as a creator, because given when that movie was made, the effects in it are beautiful, in a gory kind of sense.
Mm-hmm.
The writing is really well put together, and the film just, I think it's got good pacing.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like the ending of it, but I kind of like the bleakness of the ending. It doesn't end on, let's say, a happy note, and I don't think every film should end on a happy note.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave us Michael Myers. Let's be real. He gave us probably the best version of Michael Myers too.
Yeah.
So that alone, which I didn't know this for the longest time, but Halloween is the original Halloween is it's considered an indie film.
Yeah.
And it's considered to be one of the most successful indie films of all time. So for people that don't know that out there, that's just crazy. And a fun fact too, in the beginning of the movie when the leaves are going by, they had painted leaves because it wasn't fall time.
Hey, you got creative.
But no, I think I would put him on the list, and I'm sure there's works that I'm kind of fumbling around because I just kind of shot this idea out to do.
No, he was actually on my list as well because, I mean, like you said, Halloween, it's iconic. I mean, and that is another franchise that has persisted over the last 40 years that it's been in existence. I mean, granted, they've twisted the narratives and the timelines and whatnot, but it still persists.
Yeah.
Michael Myers has not gone away in one decade. I feel like there's not been a decade, much like Chucky, that there has not been a Michael Myers-led flick at some point. So definitely got to give him credit there. And looking at his horror franchises, I mean, you said The Fog, The Thing, Prince of Darkness,
yeah.
That one was a bit of a hard watch for me, and maybe I need to watch it again to understand it. But I remember the first time I watched it, I just didn't quite grasp everything about it. But, I respect that people dig it. Christine, that's a Stephen King story. I mean, you'd feel like that would be one of those no-brainers. It's definitely an interesting film. It feels like it's got more of a Carpenter taste than it does King.
I always forget that he did Christine. I always forget that for some reason. We should do a horror writers episode one day because we could talk about Stephen King until we're both blue in the face. But as you were saying about Carpenter, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Trying to think of some other stuff. In the Mouth of Madness, I know that one's kind of a cult classic.
Yes, so underappreciated. Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
And what's
Village
his
name?
Sam Neill, isn't it?
Sam Neill, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic actor.
He did a version or a remake of Village of the Damned, which I kind of remember it, but I feel like it was one of those that, I don't know, not a lot of people remember, probably for good reason. Not to say it was a bad movie, I just feel like it didn't have quite the charm. One of the few roles I remember seeing Christopher Reeve in where he's not Superman. So that was kind of an interesting take. And then, of course, he did stuff like Big Trouble in Little China.
Fantastic movie.
Escape from New York, Escape from L.A. So he's got some interesting stuff under his belt. Plus, the man does his own music for most of this,
yes,
if not all of it. So you got to give him credit for that too.
He's still getting props because I know he's helped with some of the creative stuff for these new Halloween films coming out. I call them the what if stories of Halloween. That's what I call them. But I mean, he's doing the music for those. Mm-hmm. He does some advising on the set. I mean, the guy's still working and still creating. And say what you will about these new Halloween films, I enjoy them. This Halloween Kills, I kind of have a love-hate thing with. There was some choices that some of the characters made that just kind of threw me off. I'm like, really? You're really going to do that? But I enjoyed the film for what it was. So
yeah. I think the fact that he finally came back around to the character, because I know seemed like at some point he was fed up with it. Mm-hmm. And I like when the creatives, whether you're an actor playing a character, you're a director who directed or wrote something very iconic. Yeah, I can understand where you kind of get tired of it, but I like when they take a moment to realize what this character means to people and they can reappreciate their creation. Much like Mark Hamill running away from Luke Skywalker for so long, it's just realize what this means to people.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about you, it's about them. You've embodied this character, or you've created something that these people hold so dear, and you can understand why they're passionate about it. And just do that for them, you know, just understand it for them. And him coming back around, John Carpenter coming back around to Halloween, I'm so happy he did, because this allows him to do the movies that he maybe wanted to do initially. Like, if he had time.
Yeah.
And the studios weren't just like, well, we got to pump out a sequel like now.
Yep.
Because that's how it kind of felt with the second one. He was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And he's young. He's made a hit. And that was something new. So why wouldn't you just be like, yeah, all right, I guess I'll make something. But you half-ass it, and it's just not what you wanted it to be. Now he's able to kind of go back and have the sequels that he wanted, in a way. So yeah, and, I'm with that.
And on that note, just real quick, I think it's important for people to realize that bringing these people back that created these characters, you normally get a much better film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 had suffered. It's not a bad movie. It just had suffered because it was way too different for the time. When they did 3, Wes Craven did help out a little bit. He gave some advice, and they took his advice, and that's considered one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies out there.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they've brought back John Carpenter, and they're like, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do you think on this? And he gives his he gives his honest opinion. He gives advice on it. You know, even the little things like bringing back the original actor that played Michael Myers to do the breathing. It's a subtle thing, but we are hearing the original Michael Myers breathe inside of his mask, and to me, I ate it up. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and having him there to help the new actor understand what it is, because it was simple direction. Just walk. Don't have to do anything, just walk. I mean, you can't get much simpler than that. And it feels like all the stunt actors after just did not understand just walk.
Yeah.
Because you take a look at part 2. I don't hate part 2, but Dick Warlock, who played the Shape in that one, he didn't seem to understand it. He thought it was this lumbering, slow walk. And you can argue that maybe he's suffering from the gunshot wounds he got earlier. Sure. But move, dude. You're just stomping so slow, and it seems so intentional that it's frustrating, because you're like, you're not walking, dude.
Yeah.
You're just slowly creeping, and it's not working for me.
See, and to me, the thing about Michael Myers that always kind of freaked me out a little bit about him, he could get into your house, he could be right behind you, and you had no idea. Mm-hmm. He was this big killing machine, but he was very light on his feet.
Mm-hmm.
He could sneak up. That walking was just so... I don't even want to say quick, because it's not quick. It's just so calculated. It's like Michael is just calculated completely.
Yeah. He's on a mission. He's going there. He's not going to rush, but he's not taking his time either. He's walking at a pace. He's going to get there. Yep. And I feel like the guy who played him in part 4 and 6, George Wilbur, is the only one who really got it right.
Yeah.
Like, up to the new guy, because it's like he did the thing. He just walked.
Yeah.
He didn't feel like he was walking slow. He didn't feel like he was walking too fast. He was just walking.
Yep.
Like, he got it.
I mean, go back and watch the films and get an idea of it, you know? Yeah. Don't overthink it, but be like, okay, I have to do this. I have to do this. But yeah.
And there was nothing more than that. No motivation, just walk.
Yep. So we've got Wes Craven.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got John Carpenter so far. Mm-hmm. I have one. I don't know if it's on your list. Toby Hooper.
Not on my list, but yeah, I could hear an argument for that.
I mean, he did one of your favorite movies, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Another movie that he did that's super big that he directed, Poltergeist.
Yes, even though some will argue against that, but we won't get into that.
I mean, when I hear his name and think of horror, it's hand in hand.
Yeah.
I know he might not have as many crazy projects that he's done as some of these others. He did Salem's Lot as well. I always forget about that one.
Mm-hmm.
And Eaten Alive.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even Salem's Lot, that is an iconic film.
It's true.
It's got it's got one of the most iconic scenes in it with the little boy at the window.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't really know what all to argue, just with the simple fact that it seems like the movies that he did direct or had his hand in some way are films that most audiences really enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would necessarily put him on the list. Maybe he's just a shout out. I'm sure there's some other directors that we could put on the list ahead of him, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to have to say he's got to go in the honorable mentions, because if we don't put the other name that I have on here, I think we'll get lynched. Because the other name that I have has to go on the list for obvious reasons, because without him, there's an entire genre that doesn't exist, and that's George Romero.
That is true.
And this is the godfather of the zombie feature, so without him, we don't have zombies. Not the way we know them,
Yep.
because they were all voodoo, mumbo jumbo back in the day, until he said, no, they're, these mindless, brain-eating creatures, and come back from the dead and whatnot. And so he put a spin on it, and now take a look at it. It used to be this underground thing that has now turned into this cultural phenomenon that I never thought in a million years would have latched on this hard, all because of one TV show.
You're right. You're completely right. Without George Romero, we would not be where we're at.
No. So he is the zombie man. And hey, all of you ramblers, I think I want to know if anyone else is doing this, so definitely chime in on the social medias. Dawn of the Dead 3D, they're doing apparently the film has been converted to IMAX 3D for whatever reason. I personally could give a shit to watch it in 3D. I just want to see it on the big screen, because you can't find it anywhere, like on the streaming services. And I'm sure that there's some international rights issues or what have you. I don't know what the hell it is. I wish to God Scream Factory would get their hands on the rights and distribute a 4K beautiful version of Dawn of the Dead. So if that's something they're hoping to do. But yeah, it's coming to theaters. If anybody else is going to watch that, I want to know about it, because I bought tickets. I'm going to see it. I can't wait. I haven't watched the movie and I don't know when. I've got it on my DVD shelf. I want a new version. I want a cleaner, more updated, modern version of the film.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Yeah.
Because Dawn of the Dead is one of his iconic films.
George Romero was on my mind, but yeah, that is a fantastic point. Without him, we would not have zombies how we have them today. So I can't even argue with you there. Tobe Hooper, yeah, we'll give him an honorable mention. We'll give him an honorable.
Yeah.
Because I was on the fence about him. I didn't know how to feel about him.
Yeah, I mean he's done some stuff, but
not of that magnitude. Not of that magnitude.
Right. Because even I know I kind of argued in Leatherface's defense earlier, and I could say that Tobe Hooper's kind of got that slasher element to him that he's kind of created, but John Carpenter really set the stage for what the slashers would become.
Yeah.
In essence. So again, I can even argue that without Michael Myers, we don't have Jason, in which was ripped off. So you see that kind of works in his favor too. So yeah.
And that's where Wes Craven comes in on the list, because he took the slasher idea and completely reinvented that.
Yeah.
So that's the beautiful thing about this. All of these have sort of gotten inspiration from one another and created horror as we know it today.
Sure.
What about upcoming directors? We don't have to do a top 4, but who are, let's just say two upcoming directors that that have been around for a little while that you're pretty excited about their work.
Okay.
Or even creators.
Tell you what, I'm actually having to look the guy's name up, because he was one we were talking about earlier. Christopher Landon, who directed Happy Death Day and Freaky.
Yes.
He also co-wrote them. He's definitely one I'm keeping my eye on, because as I was saying within the did we talk about it this episode or last episode? I don't remember.
Which one?
Last episode, I think, is where we were talking about our horror comedies.
Yes.
Yeah. So his idea of taking these combinations of ideas and smashing them together as a plot device, I'm all in for that, because he's doing something that nobody else is doing. It's unique. So I'm keeping my eye on him, because I want to see what more he's going to come up with using this concept.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I see his name attached to something, he's definitely one on my list of directors to follow.
Good choice. I've got one. This one, a lot of people like him. But I do pay attention to what he does, just because it seems like what he's given us so far has been super awesome. James Wan, just give him a shout out. He's done a lot of things that people did not think were possible. Like Insidious did so well, and nobody expected that at first. And he did something in a horror movie that hadn't been done in a while. In the first Insidious, when they're talking about the demon, and he turns, and you don't expect it at all, but you see the demon just right there by the guy, and she just screams. I went to the movie theater with a buddy of mine to see that, and it freaked him out. Just, you don't expect it. Normally in horror movies, there's a little bit of, build up. Not in this case. And
no, I like little things like that, little touches.
And the latest movie he did, one of the newest ones, *Malignant*.
Yeah,
that was a fantastic film as well. I know some people have been kind of about it, but I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I had fun with it.
Another director that I do like, and I hate to sound like this guy. I like Jordan Peele. I like a lot of the things that he does. I think sometimes people have a lot of hype for the films that he does because his films are good. But with any director, when there's a lot of hype for the movie and everybody's hyping it up so much, and I go and I see it and I'm like, it was a good movie, I enjoyed it. But it's almost like too much hype can kill something for me, and that happens a lot. And I love the movies that he does, and they're fantastic movies. But sometimes the hype is just so high, and I get it. I get the hype being high. I mean, there's been a few James Wan movies I've seen where the hype's just ridiculously high, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had the first time that I saw The Thing, I had it ruined for me because everybody was hyping it up so much. I'm like, this is a great movie, but there's so much hype. Like, tone it down. Just be like, yeah, it's a great movie. You should see it. just leave it simple.
Yeah, sure.
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
He's definitely an honorable mention. He's not an up-and-coming director, but...
No, absolutely not.
He is.
But he's definitely proven his worth.
Yes, and he's working on a new series, I think, that's coming out, and it looks really interesting.
Is that what's it about?
Let me find it here.
Because I think I know what you're talking about, but I'm not 100% sure if it's the same one.
Cabinet of Curiosities.
It's not the one I was thinking of, but yes, I have heard of that.
They released a small trailer for it. It looks like a gory good time.
I'm all in.
So I'm gonna have to put that on the list of things to definitely watch. But let's review here just real quick. So for our monsters, our Mount Rushmore of monsters, we had Frankenstein's monster, we had Chucky, Jason Voorhees, and good old Bruce from Jaws. Yeah. All iconic in their own right. For our directors, we had Wes Craven, Alfred Hitchcock, George Romero, and who was our other? John Carpenter.
John Carpenter, yep.
There it is. I think that's a pretty solid Mount Rushmore, if I do say so myself. Obviously,
I know it's not going to please everybody.
Of course.
Hey, I think it's
all perception. It's we would love to hear if you guys agree. If you disagree, we would love to hear who would be on your Mount Rushmore.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's definitely a conversation that I think would be interesting to have. So. And
I want to hear good reasons why.
Yes.
I don't want to hear just because they're your favorite. I know there was somebody that's... Nope. We're going to save that for another episode. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to come back to that later.
All right. I'm telling you, we have opinions, people. We will give them to you.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin that one because that's definitely a talking point for another episode.
I have to save this stuff. But other than that, I don't have anything. If you don't have anything, if you'd want to tell the people where to find us, you know that you do that better than I do. So.
Well, I definitely will. I do want to throw out one more horror director.
Oh, yes, please.
Up and coming. Ari Aster, the guy that did Hereditary and Midsummer.
God, yes.
That dude's got some wild ideas, and I can't wait to see what he comes up with next.
Both solid movies.
Yeah, I'll leave that. I know they can be of a very particular taste to some people, but I'm always intrigued by... So far, I've been intrigued by both movies he's done and want to see more of what he's got in store. But anyway, hey, Ramblers, how do you feel about this? What is your top, Mount Rushmore of horror icons, whether it be horror actors, horror creatures, horror directors, writers, whatever it may be? Let us know on Twitter at Horror Ramblings. But if you've got a huge list and you want to explain yourself and you want to write an essay and all that stuff, send us an email instead at horrorramblings@gmail.com. So, you don't get that weird thing where Twitter just cuts you off at so many letters and characters. You can send us an email. Just tell us everything. I'll read it. We'll read it right here. We'll make an episode of it.
Word for word.
Now, if you love social media groups, you can go over to Facebook and join our Facebook group and hang out with other horror fans like yourself. You can even find us on Instagram to see an assortment of horror images, whether it be from cons or we're just taking pictures from other people's stuff and then posting it saying, hey, we love that person. Maybe you're feeling generous and you want to show us some financial support. You can head on over to patreon.com/pencil and paper productions to chuck in a buck and help this and other shows like it grow. If you want to say nice things about the show, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us that beautiful 5-star review. You don't have to say anything. You can just hit 5 stars and be on your way. We don't care. We just want the 5 stars. And, it would be nice to hear that you love us too. But, I understand it's a little early. It's a little soon for you to be saying that you love us. And we don't want to pressure you or anything. Just, 5 stars would be nice. But, hey, you can go over to Spotify and do that very same thing if you're so inclined. And you can even answer our questions and polls. I'll put a poll up down below, maybe saying, hey, what are some other horror icons? Or, I don't know, I'll figure something out. But there's a poll and a question right down below in Spotify if you want to go check those out. All of it's appreciated. Most importantly, tell your fellow horror fiends to search Horror Ramblings on the preferred podcasting platform. We should be everywhere, but maybe not. I hope we are. If nothing else, keep up with any and all things at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. Links are in the show notes for your convenience.
And remember, guys, stay spooky out there.
This has been the Horror Ramblings podcast. Join us next time for even more.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.